Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 390 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
From an audience perspective, how do you sell your healthcare practice without losing the legacy, value, or trust you built over the years? If you're a healthcare professional like a dentist, veterinarian, or optometrist, thinking about transitioning your practice now or in the next few years, this is your must-listen moment. Greg shares what really goes into a successful sale and the hidden risks of selling to the wrong buyer, how to preserve your legacy, and why strategic planning can save you money, stress, and future regret. Our guest today is Greg Moore from MBC Brokerage. Greg is a proud sales representative from MBC Brokerage, a national firm specializing in professional practice sales and advisory services across Canada. Based in Ottawa, Greg brings over 18 years of experience in banking, specifically in financing for professionals, and holds a degree in economics from Carleton University. He assists healthcare professionals such as dentists, veterinarians, optometrists, and doctors with everything from transition planning and appraisals to selling and scaling their practices. Known for his integrity and client-first mindset, Greg helps guide each unique opportunity with the do the right thing philosophy. Whether clients are planning a sale in the near future or thinking 5 years ahead, Greg ensures that legacy, value, and peace of mind remain at the forefront. He's also a proud organ donor and encourages everyone to consider registering. Greg, it's an absolute pleasure having you here today, sir. Thank you so much for coming in. Do you have a favorite quote or say you want to share?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on your podcast today. There are a couple of quotes that I keep in mind as I go through day-to-day work. One is a quote that was attributed, I believe, to Wayne Gretzky. He said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." This quote's about taking risk, of course, and it's important in growth, whether it's professional or personal life. I believe in risk-taking, and you need to consider and research the consequences. Calculated risk-taking is important. The other one that sits with me, aside from dictionary definitions, is my dad always spoke about integrity, and he defined integrity, how you behave when no one is looking. This, again, is probably attributable to someone else in the long run, but it's a concept that always stuck with me.
Tell me about the emotional side of selling a healthcare practice. There's business, which is very clean, and you can discuss it with your accountant. But there's also an emotional side. Tell me about the emotion of selling a practice.
Well, the key with selling a healthcare professional practice, the vast majority of practices we sell are in the dental field. These professionals, in many cases, have built their practice from scratch, built their patient base, built long-standing relationships, and now they're looking at letting someone else take over. That's very hard for people to let go sometimes. They have to wrap their mind around the idea and get comfortable with the fact that somebody else will be taking care of their patients in the long run.
So you've had 18 years in banking. Banking has a wide range of everything from being the branch manager, loans officer, and commercial banking. What drifted you from from being a banker, per se, over into this niche market? What drifted you in that lane?
It was when I was looking to join the bank, a branch manager I was interviewing with said, "With your background and previous history, have you ever thought of business banking?" Sitting there in the interview, I said, "Well, I have now." And we changed the interview right on the spot. And I went straight into business banking when I joined Scotiabank. My very first financing deal was a dental deal. That client, I'm no longer with the bank, so he's not a client, but he's still a friend. I still stay in touch with him. It was an area that was clearly underserviced, did not have a lot of expertise. So it was an area that I decided this is a space that I can really help people.
Is it really a profitable area to be in? Like, do banks, if I say I graduate as a dentist or a veterinarian, is it a good chance that I'll be able to get a loan, assuming that I have my credentials and I'm entering into a market that is either underserviced? We hear about family doctors. We know that that's pretty hot commodity here in the province of Ontario. Is that a surefire bet for that type of industry?
The answer is likely. There's nothing that's guaranteed. I understand the process very well, but I'm always very clear. I don't speak for the banks anymore. I can't give assurances. In general, banks love the professional segment. They repay loans, they collect balances in their bank accounts over time. So the banks have very favorable terms for professionals. They want to do these deals. They want to assist professionals and develop those relationships. They still go through their process of evaluating credit terms, looking at personal credit bureaus and things like that. But overall, new graduates coming out of school, and even as they enter professional schooling, whether it be in dental or medical, the banks are very interested in helping these clients.
One thing that I've seen here that I'd like your take on, I understand retiring or semi-retiring as a professional, but there seems to be a move toward national veterinary corporations. What is it about these companies that do a better job or a cheaper job or a more efficient job than the sole practitioner? Is it just about getting out and semi-retiring, or is there something more about bringing a franchise model to the table?
We've seen in the industry, whether it be dental or veterinary, some of the corporate consolidation firms that are buying up practices and operating in the corporate level. There are benefits to working with these organizations. Very often they don't need bank financing, so they have private investor money that makes things simpler from the process of selling. They also have a great deal of operational support. So a professional who's looking to transition out or be a part-time, semi-retired professional, and they've got 2 to 3 years, but they don't really want to open the practice or own the practice any longer, this can be lucrative and appropriate way to go. There's the downside to working with the large corporate buyers, loss of autonomy. It's very difficult for some owners to understand that they're going to be working for somebody else. Before the fact, having this conversation with a client saying, hey, you should be prepared for this, they almost invariably say, yes, I understand. It's when you actually get into the process and they're living it that they start to say, gee, I didn't really get how deep this was going to go in terms of my emotional impact. There is that piece of whether it works for a particular seller or not.
Is this, when you're walking through this, that means you've already assessed the nature of the business. So if it's a chain coming in to buy, you already have a sense of what's going on. If you're looking at the veterinarian or optometrist, they have to have certain things in place. They have, is it the number of patients they have? Is it the equipment they have? How new is the equipment, the leaseholds, or whether they own the physical structure? How do you provide that sense of, okay, this is what you got, this is what your dollar value is? How do you build that out?
Part of the service of a professional practice brokerage like MBC is to prepare for our clients a comprehensive appraisal of everything involved in their practice. So that appraisal, it's critical for several reasons. Number one, we're establishing a market value. It's designed to give potential buyers everything they need to know about the practice. In that process, we do an in-depth financial analysis of historical data. So we're looking at all the information that, at least for 3 years, all of the financial results of the practice. And then we're looking at the risk factors, things like where's the practice located? Is the lease a strong lease, or does it have issues that make the practice difficult to sell? We adjust for risk factors of each particular practice. And then we make further adjustment for the quality of assets. So this goes towards the leaseholds and the assets that the practice has. How old are they? Are they in proper working condition, and so on? So that comprehensive appraisal, when it's complete, we've got a document that is reliable for a seller to know, okay, this is where my practice is in the market. We've got a document that's reliable for a buyer to understand everything they need to know about potentially purchasing a practice. And it's got a track record with the financial institutions that they accept. In general, they'll review our appraisals, but they know the content they're getting from MBC when an appraisal is put in front of them.
They say, I heard a line many years ago, that a business or asset is worth exactly at an auction what someone's willing to pay. Do owners tend to overestimate what the business is worth or underestimate it from what you've seen?
Normally, what I've seen is the owner doesn't know where things come in. I'll get the question, what percentage of my gross revenue should I estimate my practice is worth? Not a good indicator. I tell people all the time, I could have two practices side by side. They're both generating $2 million worth of gross revenue. One has normalized cash flow at $500,000. The other has normalized cash flow at $800,000. Drastically different values, right? More often than not, I'm not getting much from clients that say, I expect my practice is worth X amount. It's more about use your expertise and tell me where I fit into the market at this point.
When someone is coming up to the point and saying, listen, how much is the dog in the window worth? Sorry, bad pun for the veterinarians. But when you get to that part, what are the things that physician or vet or optometrist overlook because they understand their business? But when they start doing a transition, there might be knowledge gaps, especially if they've been in business for a while. If the person's been in place for 15, 20 years, is looking to exit out, what are the things that they might have not mapped out that could actually slow down a transition? Say they want to leave in 2 years or 1 year, health conditions, or, they're just tired of working at a job.
Sure. One of the key things in Canada, financial and tax planning is critical for buyers or sellers to consider before they're ready to make a switch. The lifetime capital gains exemption, and I have to be very clear, I'm not an accountant. I understand the process, but I do not give advice in this space to my clients. I'll always defer to their professional advisors. The lifetime capital gains exemption, when you're selling shares of a corporation, can literally save sellers thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the sale. However, there are requirements that need to be met to qualify for the lifetime capital gains exemption. Some of those requirements have a 2-year time frame to demonstrate adherence to the requirement. So it's vital that people considering selling their practice address that aspect with their professional advisors well in advance. The other piece that we touched on is the lease. The lease is a huge aspect that I don't think a lot of people give proper credence to its importance. I've seen very profitable, well-run practices that are made virtually unsellable by a poor lease. Demolition clauses are becoming more prevalent, and I do not negotiate leases, but I work with my clients to say, there's information in this lease that could cause you issues down the road. You really should secure the proper advice and expertise so that this is not an issue when it comes time to put your practice on the market. Those are the two big ones that I see most frequently.
So when you're talking leases, you were talking 5 to 10 year lease terms, typically.
Yes.
Is it also terms of renewal? Like, I understand the demolition, X-ray equipment, if you're going to bring that in, or you're bringing in certain processes, chemicals, if you're working with certain chemicals that are volatile or toxic, easy in the professional's hand, but you have to be rated for it, right?
Absolutely. When it comes to the premises lease, using a dental practice, for example, typically the owner is going to have a lease that is usually a 5-year term with whatever number of renewals. When they start out, it's often a 2 5-year renewals. So they've got a total of 15 years worth of time available. Okay, great. Now, 7 years later, they're looking at selling. They're into their second 5-year term. So they've got about 8 years left. When that buyer goes to look for financing, their bank is going to want term plus renewals for a period of time at least as long as the length of their loan, which in this industry is 12 years. So in this example, the seller has only 8 years. That's not the end of the world. They just have to have confidence that the landlord will negotiate an extension in good faith for enough time that the bank is also willing to provide a loan based on that lease. For equipment, leases, and so on, those are a little bit different because when MBC does an appraisal, the assumption is all assets are free and clear. Even if there's a lease, the general process is the seller is going to pay out their leases with the proceeds at closing. So the buyer receives all assets on a free and clear basis.
Are there people who want to shop? And how do you make sure that you tell them you're investing time and money in them and you want to make sure they're serious? How does this dating process happen?
With buyers, you mean?
No, with sellers.
Oh, okay. My relationship with sellers is a long-term relationship. I develop relationships over time, and my process is to ensure my clients know that I'm there for them when they need. When they're ready to appraise their practice and list it for sale, there's a contract that hires MBC to do that work, and a commission payable on closing. The key with that process is if I don't sell the practice, I don't get paid. I tell sellers up until the point that we find the right buyer and bring the transaction to a successful conclusion, I'm working for free.
And they don't take advantage of you.
No, they really don't, because when they sign a contract that gives MBC the authority to list their practice for sale, they need to be pretty committed to the process. I haven't seen any professionals willing to put their practice out there with no intention of actually selling, assuming they get the offer and the terms that they want. Sometimes practices don't actually sell. The right buyer just isn't available, or the expectations are not realistic enough to find the right buyer. But that's not out of the seller taking advantage.
So this whole process sounds like residential sales, except niche, very niche. If I were to looking to buy a practice, a dental operation, I'm not a dentist. Could I buy a dental operation or a veterinarian operation?
Absolutely, you can. To touch on your first point, you're right in that what I do has some transferable similarities to the real estate market. The main difference is in real estate, there is extensive competition and continuous churn of inventory. People are always buying and selling homes, and there's lots of brokers and sales representatives that are prepared to assist in that space. With healthcare professional segment, there aren't many sales that occur in a year. There might be a couple of hundred, but very specialized brokerages deal in that space.
What type of dollar value is this normally floating at? And I know the answer, it depends.
Absolutely.
But what type of numbers are being talked about when you're talking about a dental practice or veterinarian clinic?
In dental, you can see a very wide range, right? A small practice that is 3 operatories, it's got its 5 or 6 or 700 patients going 4 days a week, be worth anywhere from $500,000 to $800,000. Larger practices seeing $3 million plus in gross revenue and $1 million on the bottom line. They're $4.5, $5 million practices sometimes. So there is a very wide range. A good running dental practice with strong cash flow, good patient base, growing, lots of potential. Is it in the $2 million range? Probably in a lot of cases.
So that would also include their operating procedures. It's not just, I'm a dentist, I know how to work in someone's mouth, I have staff. It's the operating systems that are utilizing, like, their software, et cetera, and their protocols is all one package. It's like almost like if you're buying a franchise without it being a franchise.
That's correct. So there's a great deal of practice value in goodwill. The tangible assets have value, but the vast majority of the value of a dental practice comes from cash flow. How much is the doctor earning after everybody's been paid? And what does that translate into in terms of value in the market? Obviously, those tangible assets with their value, okay, those are fine, but there's a good amount of goodwill that's built in there. And that's where you're including all the software, all the all the employment contracts, anything else that goes along with the practice, that's all built in.
As an ex-banker,
Mhm.
do you find that makes the process flows easier? Does it provide more clarity quicker? What does your banking background, how does it play out in a sale in your mind?
Well, the key there for me is I understand that process very well, but I cannot speak for the banks. The typical hesitation I hear from buyers, and I'm always clear, I don't give buyers advice. They have to source their own advice. I represent my clients, the sellers, and their best interests, but I can give information to buyers. Typically, especially new buyers who have not owned a practice before, they're often very hesitant to think that their bank will give them the money they need to buy a practice they're interested in. And my response is normally try them. I tell buyers, no guarantees, but you're part of a profession that has a long-standing history of repaying loans to the bank. You'll be buying an asset that has cash flow. As long as my appraisal is accurate and I've given you correct information, present your case to the bank. There's no promise they'll say yes, but they'll typically do what they can to make a deal work within reason. I'm able to give that feedback just to tell buyers the banks are more favorable, look at you more favorably than perhaps you give them credit for.
And one thing that interests me is I sense things have changed in 30 years. 30 years ago, your 55-year-old dentist hired a junior, and she was around the process for about 5 years. And then she made an offer to the dentist to either semi-retired or retired. What changed that? What professionalized? What made that not just a straightforward? What brought the brokerage into the process?
Well, the brokerage has been involved in the process even back in the times when an owner would hire an associate or a local veterinarian and then eventually sell to that person. Those transactions still happen, by the way. Larger practices where the professional needs that second person in there just by sheer capacity. One person can only do so much work. So they bring in an associate, and when the time comes to sell, they're willing to give that associate a first crack at the can to buy the practice. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Where it changed quite a bit is with technological advancements. I'll use dentistry, for example. Dentists are able to complete a lot of dentistry and a high volume of dentistry, much more than ever before, because processes are faster and more efficient. That dentist can very often do all the dentistry themselves. And the point where they actually have to bring in somebody is maybe never reached. In that case, the dentist is ready to consider selling, and there hasn't been an associate. They've never needed one. And that's just a function of efficiency and technological growth over the course of many years. The things professionals can do these days compared to 30 years ago is unbelievable.
So if you're looking at a transition, someone says, listen, I'm going to sell my business. You come along, you find a buyer. Are there NDAs involved? What are areas that stay true and confidential? And what can
Absolutely. Confidentiality and privacy play a monster role in what I do, because the key with selling any professional practice, we only want to have interested parties know that the practice is available. So in my role, first off, everything the seller gives me in terms of details of their practice, whether they're financial statements or software reports or information on their employees, 100% confidential with me. That information obviously gets shared with no one. The second part of that is when we go to list a practice, our general process is I'm telling the seller, okay, I'm going to prepare a web ad, which is going to go on our website, and it's going to be, I can use it for LinkedIn and so on. Its purpose is to pique the interest of potential buyers without identifying your practice in particular. I tell the sellers, I'm going to prepare this. I'm going to send it to you. You vet it. You take a look at it and tell me if the general content is acceptable to you, you're comfortable with what we're putting, and that it's not identifying you in particular. Once we list the practice, that information goes out for public view. Anybody can look at it on our website, LinkedIn, or wherever else they may find the information. That document also has, for more information, contact Greg. So when somebody has a deeper level of interest, they'll reach out to me. The first thing I do is verify they've got a confidentiality agreement registered with MBC. And if they do, great. I can then send them the appraisal. Now they're getting private information about the clinic, but I'm always reminding them, you're receiving this in confidence. Don't forget your obligation and your commitment to keeping this private. Then they can work with their accountant and their lawyer to determine their next steps. But nobody gets information about a practice listing from MBC without verifying they have that confidentiality agreement on file.
You just mentioned something interesting, a lawyer and accountant.
Oh.
If you're the buyer or the seller, it's almost like there are three legs that are involved here, and the other two are essential. And you also mentioned something earlier about tax planning, which is not necessarily every accountant can do, or a financial planner. So maybe there's a fourth leg. Would that be a fair estimate to say that you have to have your part of the professional service when everything starts to roll through? You'll help deliver the sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's more to it than that.
Oh, 100%. So a key feature for a transaction, say we come to an agreement between buyer and seller, a practice will sell, it'll close on this date for X amount of money and some high level terms. Now we've got lawyers for both sides and accountants for both sides involved. This is a specialized area. There's a lot of transferable skills to regular business and corporate sales, but there is some specialization here. My role, in addition to assisting with moving things to a completed sale, is communication. Lawyers talk to lawyers and accountants can talk to accountants, but the seller's lawyer is not going to call the buyer directly. If there's something that needs to be done or communication that needs to happen, the seller's lawyer will contact me and say, I need you to get this information from the buyer because I can talk to everybody. That's a critical aspect of the service that I provide and the way that I can help my clients with moving a deal towards completion.
So if you've got a couple of years to work with somebody and they want to grow to make that sale a more exciting number, how do you help them scale into sale?
Scale into sale. There are a number of ways we can help business owners scale their practice to a level they want when they go to sell. Every practice is different. I'll give you an example. I'll take a look at a set of financial statements and I'll say to the seller, you're spending $25,000 last year on marketing and advertising. What'd you get from it? In some cases, they're able to say this expense generated 150 new patients. And this is coming from their marketing service provider. Very often they don't know. Either you need to understand, and this is where my advice comes in, we either need to understand that this money that you're putting out is worth your while, or stop putting it out. Your supplies are running at 12% of your gross revenue. Depending on the industry, dental, very often an efficiently run dental practice is running at 8 or 9%. Okay, how can we help you find efficiencies there? Those are very general numbers, of course, but when there are opportunities to say, can we make this more efficient? I'll touch on one more big one, the schedule. The reception and admin staff are critical to the proper and efficient operation of a professional practice. The best run practices, that person at the front desk that's greeting patients and answering phones, are capable of filling a schedule next week. The dentist looks at the following week and they're only 40% full. A really great receptionist is capable of making the calls and filling that up and ensuring time is well used. That is a huge factor for helping a client scale that practice up when we find those opportunities.
We've talked to another business evaluator out west, and she doesn't focus on this particular area. So we say, why do people come knocking on the door? We already know one reason right now. It's, I want to sell the business. Do you ever find that someone is in a partnership breakup, a group have bought a business and someone wants to buy out their share? or someone has a matrimonial dispute. Apparently, the strong advice from the lady out west is don't get divorced. It's going to empty the pocket. Is that another reason you would provide a valuation? Either and there's not necessarily always a dispute, but let's say someone comes in and says, I don't think your business is worth that much, or it's CRA, Canadian Revenue Agency, coming in. I think you owe us more money. Do you also find that comes into play for you guys, or is that lower on the spectrum?
It does come into play. It's not something that is a regular occurrence. Certainly, matrimonial breakdowns and partnership breakdowns happen. And MBC is engaged to do evaluation of the practice so that the parties can take our document to their lawyer or accountant. And from there, all the necessary math is done to determine what the payouts look like. So yeah, we do get that for sure. Very seldom does a sale come off of that, occasionally, but my process when it comes to those questions from potential clients is I'll walk them through the process of an appraisal and what they can expect to receive. I'm happy to assist. Talk to your accountant, say, hey, I talked to Greg at NBC. This is what he's saying. Is this worth my while before you hire me? I like to know that I'm providing value before getting paid for being work.
Greg, an appraisal is a snapshot. How long is that considered valuable or locked in valuable when things change as much as they seem to change lately?
The answer is, from a banking perspective, a bank will accept professionally prepared appraisal for a year from the date it was prepared. I tell clients all the time, an appraisal by definition means as is, where is at a point in time. We're not taking into account potential. We're not taking into account future financial projections or anything like that. So the appraisal is good for a year. If we go a little past a year in terms of how long the practice has been on the market, we'll do a financial update so we can tell the bank, look, the number of operatories haven't changed. There hasn't been any major renovations. There hasn't been any massive changes to equipment. The only thing that's really changed is the financial stuff. So here's all the update. Here's all the supporting documents that go with it. Here's the new value. And that's generally going to be sufficient. We can ensure that we're not on a 1-year cutoff before we have to start the process all over again.
One question I have, think of residential real estate, and that some realtors are much better at listing and some people are much better at selling. You are often helping sell practices. Are there people in your industry that their job is to meet with Greg because they're buying practices? Tell me about that marriage. Who's selling to Greg to sell practices?
So in my role, my clients are solely sellers. Sellers hire the brokerage to assist them in marketing their practice, finding a buyer, and taking a transaction through to conclusion. Unlike the real estate segment, buyers do not hire brokerages to assist them in finding a practice and represent them. Buyers, simply because, where you find practices for sale, pretty straightforward. Generally the websites of the major brokerages are where you're going to find the most information. Obviously, somebody like me, I'm advertising on LinkedIn. I post all my dental practice listings on the University of Toronto. Buyers will engage their accountant and their lawyer for representing their interests in a transaction.
In your bio, there's mention of being an organ donor. Does that play a role in how you view this whole process? Does that play a role in your business philosophy?
The quick background is, so 2011, I was a liver donor for my brother. It was a huge undertaking. And what occurred to me back at that time, aside from the obvious ramifications of going through this procedure, and I'd actually said to my wife, these medical professionals are unbelievable. On Sunday afternoon, they're at home, they're enjoying the sunshine, and on Monday morning, they're going to go to work, they're going to cut into two people, take a piece out of one, put it in another, and both those people are going to get up and walk away. It's unbelievable what they do. They don't have that same level of expertise in the business world. These healthcare professionals play such an amazing role in the lives of everyday Canadians. And they're so committed to their own craft that when they need help on the business side, I have expertise that can add value and genuinely help them by doing the right thing. That underlies everything that I do.
What one thing would you like medical care professionals to take away from this hour?
Well, I think the key I'd like to communicate to any medical professionals sounds kind of funny, but no judgment. Very often I find professionals are going to say, I want to reach out to a guy like Greg, but I've had challenges along the way and I don't really want to discuss them. My role is not judgment. I don't come into a practice and say, you did this wrong or that wrong. It's a process of how can I help you? How can I add value? Let's talk about where you're at. The past is the past. Let's find the right way to bring this to a successful conclusion, whether you want to sell in a year or 5 years. The key for me is to communicate, reach out, have a conversation with me or one of my colleagues. If you get that sense that these guys really know what they're talking about, we can build that relationship from a good base of understanding where the practice is and where we can take it.
Last thing, we're on Zoom, and that means the world. But where's the geography you like to play in, and how do we reach you?
Well, I'm located in Ottawa, Ontario, but I can assist clients anywhere in Canada in any healthcare segment. The 3 segments that we deal with most typically, and this is just a sheer function of demand by the healthcare segment, dentistry, veterinary probably account for 95% of the work that we do. Optometry accounts for the vast majority of what's left. And the odd outside healthcare segment, but not nearly as frequent as the main 3. So my contact, easiest way to reach me is by email, which is greg@mbcbrokerage.ca. I'm also available on LinkedIn.
I want to say thank you to Greg Moore, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. Greg's been born and raised here in Ottawa. He's watched a family friend struggle through a rushed sale of a medical practice that left patients and staff in disarray, and that moment fueled his mission to do things differently. If this would provide you a sense of calmness and stability, if you're looking to migrate through or expand your practice, connect with Greg. He can make that transition smooth and simple.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at infovcreativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayneemotive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8, and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Jovan Strika from Hive Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. This podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts, participants, or affiliated groups do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.